All right. Hey guys. Thanks. Thanks a lot for coming out here. I know this is a Friday night and it's like 8:30, almost 9. So I'm really grateful that you guys are here. And really quickly, big thanks to Michael and everyone else for putting on CypherCon. It's an honor to be here and speaking to you guys. And also a big shout out to Adrian and the rest of the AV guys, because they helped me for like an hour troubleshooting these issues before the conference even began today. So a big thank you to those guys. But today we're going to be talking about IoT, and we're going to be giving a few demos of just how it's...
You might want to keep it on the presentation display because it just went away.
It went away?
Yeah. So you might want to take back that thank you also, because apparently we didn't do anything.
Okay.
You got a dry run of your intro. That's
Are
great.
you still recording? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, no. Still, thanks to those guys. I don't know. I'll just roll on with it, I guess. I don't know if you can adjust the camera. Or...
Well, can you go back to just the slide view? That was displaying.
Okay.
And that is displaying.
Okay. So I guess we're back. And I'm going to have to keep the slides like this so that it'll record. But, again, thank you guys for coming out. We're going to be doing live hacking demos today of some IoT devices. If you had read the schedule, you would have seen that Rick Ramgattie was supposed to present, but unfortunately he wasn't able to make it today, so he asked me to step in, fill in for him. So, my name's Joshua Demang. I am an aspiring security guru. I love all things application security and reverse engineering. Love doing CTFs in my spare time, and you know, I'm a hacker. I really enjoy mucking around with things, learning how they work, seeing where they're secure, how they're insecure. I work with Rick. I'm an associated security analyst at Independent Security Evaluators. We are a security consulting firm out of northern Baltimore, and we perform security assessments for our clients. We primarily focus on application security, so web, mobile, native applications, and we take different approaches. White box, where we know everything about it; black box, where we know next to nothing about the applications we assess, and generally everything in between. But today, again, we're going to talk about IoT and how insecure it is. So we're going to talk about a little bit about this whole notion of what is IoT, how it can be dangerous, and then we're going to look at two specific devices. We have a Belkin router and we have a Motorola Focus IP camera. We're going to show just how they're vulnerable, and then afterwards we're going to discuss a little bit about what can be done to mitigate this sort of rampant insecurity that we find in IoT. So let's take a bit of a step back and talk about background. So we hear IoT and we kind of hear it mentioned all the time, but what is it? And the best way that I can describe it is it's this notion that all these sorts of devices, whether they're kitchen appliances like refrigerators or thermostats or just anything really, it's this notion that everything can and for some reason should be interconnected and be willing to talk with each other, right? It's a good idea. It's a good concept. It's very it's a very noteworthy thing to try and implement this sort of thing, but there are a lot of dangers to doing so. If y'all remember back in October of last year, 2016, Dyn, a very big DNS provider, it was hit with a massive DDoS attack, a distributed denial of service attack, and it took a lot of websites down for the better part of a day in October. So this DDoS attack was performed by the Mirai botnet, and it was found out that this botnet was a collection of compromised IoT devices, everything from IP cameras to baby monitors, thermostats. They were just sitting out on the internet, insecure, and somebody found them, and they pwned them, they were able to control them, and they were able to redirect a ton of network traffic to Dyn and effectively deny them from serving DNS queries, which cost a lot of money to a lot of companies that day. But it's more than just, that's only just one thing that we've seen, this one danger. but it poses IoT and the insecurity in the IoT poses quite a few dangers to users as well. So we're going to be taking a look at two specific devices today, as I said. And the first one we're going to be talking about is this Belkin router that I have up here on the table. So this router it's a very small home office router. It's very simple. It has a web interface which you use to control most of its functionality. It has a few bells and whistles, like it can connect back to Belkin, but otherwise it's your standard router. But this router, Belkin had implemented authentication in the wrong way. And I'm not trying to pick on Belkin, I'm just using it as an example. But they were using client-side authentication. And what exactly do I mean by that? So normally when you're authenticating to an application, you would want to send whatever password it is to your account. You're going to want to send that over the network to the server, and the server is going to hash it using some algorithm. It's going to compare it with what it has saved on the server, and then if those two match, they're going to log you in. And for the most part, that's kind of what Belkin does, except for some reason, they hash your password before they send it, and in the JavaScript, they have the saved admin password hash. So it might be a bit hard to see up there, but there's this variable password, and it just has the admin password hash right there served down to the user in the JavaScript. So, really quickly, I'm going to demo this for you guys. And hopefully, alright, so AV's still good. Okay. So, let's go to the admin interface of the Belkin. Very simple. Oh, let me make that a bit bigger for you guys. There you go. So, let's try and log in. I reset the password to something that I have no idea what it is, so I'm not even going to try and figure out what it is, but instead, I don't need to figure out what it is because I can just go into the JavaScript. I'm going to use Firebug, it's a common utility. I'm going to visit this page, login.stm, and if I scroll down a little bit, start to see the JavaScript variables, and right here is the password, or rather the password hash. So, copy that, and make sure that I'm intercepting requests. I'm going to be using Burp Suite for that. Turn intercept on. And then I don't know what the password is, so I'm just going to enter in some junk value. But Burp Suite will have captured my request. Right here, it's going to post to login.exe. Here it has whatever I assume it's MD5, I'm not entirely sure, but it has some hash of whatever random string I entered into it. But I know this doesn't work, so instead I'm going to replace it with the hash that was in the JavaScript. Forward that request along, and then go back. I am now logged in as admin on the router. Right? I can control all settings. I am able to redirect traffic. I have full control of it, and that's bad enough, but I can also use this router as a compromised host on your network. I can pivot to other devices which may be insecure. So it's a big problem, right? But the second device, I think it's a bit scarier. The second device we're going to be talking about is this IV camera, Motorola Focus 73. It's a very interesting device. So it's running in embedded form of Linux on the back end, and one of the tools it has installed, it's of importance to us in this demonstration, that's BusyBox installed, so that's going to have a lot of common utilities. It's going to help us in our demo. And it's also, the way we're going to go about this, it's running two web servers, or rather it's running the same web server on two different ports. One on standard port 80, unsecured HTTP, but then it's also running that same web server over port 8080. And this web server has a complete lack of any notion of authentication or authorization. So I can access all pages, I can access all AJAX requests, I can interface with the entirety of the web application without being authenticated or authorized to do so, just so long as I can actually access the IP camera, so long as I'm able to connect to it on the network. I can go to the web server and run through all of it. But there are two other vulnerabilities, and they both happen from the same core functionality. There's command injection and remote file inclusion, which both will lead to a full compromise of this IP camera. So they both happen in this process for the firmware upgrade. So the way that you're supposed to interface with this camera is through Motorola's own mobile app, but it's basically just a front-end interface for the web application. So you would tell it to download firmware from Motorola's servers, and then it would store it on your phone, and then it would upload that firmware to the camera directly from your phone. But that's all just happening over HTTP, right? Standard web requests. So I could access this firmware update page, and within the firmware update process, the way in which we gain command injection is through the file name, right? So it's not doing any real check on the firmware file you provided. It's not doing any integrity check to see whether the file is an actual firmware file or any sort of script. I believe it's just a simple tar archive. But it's not doing any sorts of checks on that. And nor is it checking the file name that you provided. It's not doing any input validation. So I'm just going to show you it via the demo. So so I can very easily get to the firmware update page, and here I could browse. I could send it anything, and it's not going to check whatever I send it. But instead of trying to manually browse through it, we have this script that a coworker of mine, Jacob Holcomb, had developed specifically for this talk. So what it's going to do, I'm going to run it, and I need to point it at the camera's IP address, rather than the web server. And what it's going to do is it's going to send this malform request where within the file name it's going to perform a command injection. If we go back and we look at the file, it might actually be better since it's not. Okay, so it's a bit hard to see. I apologize for that. But problems with the AV. So it's using Hazerl to form these CGI scripts, and Hazerl is something I've never heard of before looking at this camera. But it just takes basic Lua or Bash, and it's using that as the backend to perform all the CGI requests. But in line 8, what it's doing is it's taking the file name that you gave it, and it's inputting it directly into a shell command. So there we have command injection. We can perform command substitution via backticks. What it'll do is it will take whatever's in those backticks and then run that command, replace it with the output. But that command can be anything, and this is running as root. So the script that I just sent it is going to overwrite the root cron job, and it's going to spawn a netcat listener. So very easily, I can just netcat to the device. Okay, BusyBox on the device. You can see this right here. And since it's running, or since the web server is running as root, I have full root control over the device. And not only that, but what I also think was funny, remember how I said you can access the web server without any authorization? We can actually view the video feed, right? So if I go to, oops. All I need to do is go to the web server, /video.cgi, and part of the script, along with just accessing the video feed, I can also control the pan, tilt, zoom features. So we implemented that as part of the script. It's just making Ajax requests. So yeah, I'd like to move the camera. Let's maybe move it up. Let's move it up and just a random number. 5. Ooh, that's spooky. But okay. So I've shown you guys that these two devices up here were really broken, right? The manufacturers, the developers, they didn't really take security into mind. So IoT can be very dangerous, but there are a few things that you guys can do and companies can do in particular to protect themselves from this sort of rampant insecurity that we find in IoT. So number one, if you're going to be using some of these devices in your network, make sure they're segmented, right? Make sure that they're put on their own subnet, they're separated from any other devices, so if for some reason they were to be compromised, that they can't be used to then gain further access into your system. Along with that, you're going to want to perform network traffic analysis, right? So figuring out exactly what sorts of network traffic is normal inside your network, and if you detect then anything which goes against that norm, you'll know that something's up with your IoT devices. Also, updating security policies. So mandating that these devices are patched when and if manufacturers roll out security updates, making sure that these devices are actually getting patched with those updates. Managing credentials. You're going to want to make sure that policies are there for those. And also commissioning these devices. So making sure that these devices aren't just added to your network without any sort of know-how, without anyone else knowing. Right? I do have to mention IPv6. You're going to want to start planning ahead for that because that is going to be rolling out. And some of these devices that may introduce incompatibilities. And finally, this notion of chain of trust, making sure that these devices that you get are from reputable manufacturers, ones which have a good track record of not only taking security into mind when building the devices, but also issuing timely patches when they do find security vulnerabilities. So, and if you guys would like to learn a bit more about what you can do specifically to protect yourselves, come visit the IoT Village. We're here for the rest of tonight at CypherCon, and we have a lot of information to share. So, if you guys have any questions? Yeah.
There's a technology you mentioned that you kind of glossed over. Was it Haskell? No, it wasn't Haskell.
It was Haskell. It's a way of forming CGI scripts. It's different than PHP or something else.
And how did you use that in your exploit development?
I didn't use it in my exploit development. So the camera was using Haskell as the backend technology to create the CGI scripts on the camera. Right?
That makes sense.
I'm not sure what their notion for choosing it was, but it just takes like Lua or Bash scripts and use those as the backend for CGI.
And it constructed a command line with post data.
Sure.
What was the intercept program you used?
I'm sorry?
The intercept program you used.
Oh, for the Belkin? That was Burp Suite.
Do you know if anyone's reversed that hashed password?
I'm not sure. It's irreversible, right? By the very notion of hashing, or it should be, but. Okay, well, if there aren't any more questions, again, thank you guys so much for coming out late on a Friday night. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.